our next speaker is Jakub. He's CEO of Groundcom. So it's a startup from Czech Republic that specialized on Earth observation. So we're having second company in this industry. So Jakub, the floor is yours. Please tell us more about your startup and what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you hear me and see my screen. So good afternoon, I'm Jakub Lajmon, and I'm one of the co-founders of Groundcom. So I was asked to share with you a little bit of a story about the need, what the ground station is, and what is necessary. Because as we heard, satellites can do actually really the nice miracles in this age. So it started back then, our journey with that I was a software engineer with the passion for space. I think that all of us here have some passion for space. And I converted actually to the business with a software company, and the first combination of technology and aerospace or aviation was the first startup in 2018 in aviation. It was based in Switzerland, so it's like a system for booking for private helicopters. And 2-3 years ago, I left the execution of this company, so they are like profitable and running autonomously at this moment, because I met one astrophysicist in the US who actually told me about CubeSats. And then I found out that the space is actually not so far away. And then I found out there are like the university teams or like the commercial companies like working on the satellites, and it's not already like so far away. So then I also checked that actually the market is going really like multiplying. So it's really quickly developing. And the report says right now that the amount of the satellites will multiply a few times in the next decade. But the problem is that to operate these satellites, you need the ground station. So technically the antenna and some related equipment, which is used to communicate and operate the satellites, to download all this valuable data, which is sensing, or to operate to find out if the satellite is okay. So when I had the opportunity to visit a few teams operating their satellites before, it was this like a mission control room, it was like a smaller than on this picture. But definitely there are like a few screens. When you see the trajectory, then you have the connection on, satellite is passing, so you do this data flowing. And then I realized that, okay, so then it was quiet. So after 15 minutes, actually there was like, okay, so satellite actually is below the horizon. So now we don't have connection. We don't know actually satellite is still okay. And we can just analyze the data we got. So for months and years, you work on satellites, and then actually you have just like this short time windows, and you need to wait for another hours to actually have, again, the communication if you have one of these antennas. So it's caused because if you have one antenna, for example, in Czech Republic, of course, you can communicate with the satellite only when it's like traveling around Europe. And of course, like you can use, or you would need, the many antennas like these, especially if you have constellations or if you have these data heavy missions, for example, like SAR imaging or optical imaging, because then you have a lot of data and you need actually a lot of time to transfer them down. So, but this is actually how we started the company. We developed and installed ground stations for our customers, and it's also one of our connections like to the Gulf region, because as we actually have a plan to have these units globally, one of the locations is also like in the Gulf region. But the problem is that to build stations around the world for a company itself, which is operating satellites and needs a lot of these antennas around the world, is simply inefficient, unless you are a government customer or you have different motivation than the cost efficiency. So then you can lease time of the existing stations, because there are the networks which actually developed from previous mostly government and defense programs, and now they are like fully commercial, but it's pretty tricky to find enough availability, or when there is availability, it's very expensive to get enough time or all the time you would need. So then you realize that the problem is actually that the current products are inefficient for scaling. So this is the business objective. It's not about technology, but the business point is actually it's inefficient for scaling. So imagine that you are trying to build an affordable taxi service, for like a new space companies, but you are going only to buy the Lamborghinis. So you will actually not be able to be very, very cost efficient. So that's why we have developed ground stations which are, of course, affordable. So it's very like a push on the cost efficiency. But also the important aspects are that it needs to be really quick to manufacture and quick to deploy. because there are also other parameters, how many ground stations you can develop or manufacture during the year. But our customers, the satellite operators, they don't need like all these details about the optimization. They just need to communicate. So that's why we provide them with a complex communication service, and they just pay per use. So it's the same like with the telco operators. You don't care about actually how they optimize their telco towers and everything. You just want to have coverage, a lot of coverage for reasonable cost for a data plan. So you have like various missions, and it has different requirements. Sometimes you just need a cheap, affordable connection a lot of the time, so multiple hours a day, not just like a few 15-minute windows. Sometimes you actually prefer a secure connection for a few minutes, and you want really to have hardware and this antenna only on your premises when it's really secure. So there are different motivations for security, or maybe sometimes it's independence. You just want to have your own hardware, even if there are antennas of some other players around the world. So that's how it crystallized our offering to have like two pillars. One is development and installation of ground stations itself. Yeah, for these like motivations, usually like the satellite operators would like to have some antennas like on their premises. And for this cost-efficient solution, we are also operating network of stations which provide service, something like a telco operator. Like we build these towers, such as satellite operators can just communicate with the satellites. So that's also this like a connection to the Gulf region, as I mentioned. At this moment, a few of our units are being installed in this area. And by principle, when you would like to build a company which is something like a global telco operator, you actually like need to cover like all various areas in a world where you have partners and clients. So that's our direct connection. And last but not least, what I learned that when I transferred my capacity from a technology enthusiast to businessman is that to build something technical and to make it working is one challenge. But to make it as a profitable business requires totally different skills. So our team combines on one side technical experience from European Space Agency, academia, research institutions. We also we are alumni of the European Space Agency Business Incubator. We are led and consulted by serial entrepreneurs in the space industry and controlled by our investors with a strong background in finance. So that's why we are combining also like what we like, the technology enthusiasm, and also building the profitable business. So that's short introduction from our side. If you have any other questions, then I will be happy to reconnect after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jakub.